Welcome to the Self-Sufficiency channel with Johnny Lee. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you find this content valuable to your life. Today, I want to talk about one of the most arrogant habits in religion. And I mean arrogant in the real sense. Not loud, not rude, not flashy. I mean self-centered. Because religious people love to tell stories about how God saved them. You know, God saved me from a car accident. God saved me from a fire. God saved me from a disease. God saved me from financial ruin. God protected me when I should have died. And every time I hear those testimonies, I have the same question in my mind. If God saved you, why didn't he save the children? Why didn't he save the starving child? Why didn't he save the child with bone cancer? Why didn't he save the child trapped in a war zone? Why didn't he save the child who burned in a house fire? Or why didn't he save the child who was born only to suffer, only to cry, only to die before ever understanding what life even was? See, this is where religion becomes offensive, not comforting, offensive, because it teaches people to interpret their own survival as divine favor, while millions of innocent children are left to suffer without intervention. And I want to say this as clearly as possible. If your theology tells you that God intervened for your car wreck, but ignored the starving child, then your theology is not beautiful. It is monstrous. People love saying God had his hand on me. Okay. Where was his hand when that little girl died of leukemia? Where was his hand when that boy starved to death? Where was his hand when that infant was born into agony? Where was his hand when children were crying under rubble? Where was his hand when children were abused, trafficked, mutilated, or buried under systems they never chose? See, when believers talk like this, they reveal something ugly. They reveal that their God is either selective or imaginary. Because if he is all powerful and all loving and he can intervene in history, then the next question is unavoidable. Why are the most helpless among us still the least protected? That is the question religion never wants to sit with. They want to move past it. They want to say, well, God's ways are not our ways. No, that's not an answer. That's an escape hatch. That's what you say when your theology has failed and you still don't want to admit it. And I know some people will hear this and say, Johnny, you don't understand. God does save people. Miracles do happen. Well, fine. Then answer the question. Why your miracle and not theirs? Why your survival and not theirs? Why your Bible surviving the fire, but not the child inside the house? Why your near miss on the highway, but not the child in the famine? Why your financial breakthrough, but not the little one born into pain and buried in obscurity? What makes your life so central to the universe that God moved heaven and earth for you, but not for them? That's not humility, that's vanity baptized. That's human arrogance wearing church clothes. Now let me go deeper. I'm not even saying weird things never happen. I'm not saying survival is always easy to explain. I'm not saying there aren't moments in life where something happens and you look around and think, I don't know how I made it. Those moments happen. Life is strange. Hell, the universe is strange. Probability is strange. Luck is strange. Human memory is strange. But I can't explain it is not the same thing as God did it. That leap is where religion sneaks itself into every gap. And religious people are trained to do that leap automatically. You survive something, God did it. You avoid something terrible, God did it. You find meaning afterward, God did it. But if God did it for you, then the burden is on you to explain why he did not do it for the innocent child. You don't get to claim divine intervention for your own life and then shrug when children are left to die. You don't get to call your survival a miracle and then call their death a mystery. That is moral cowardice. Because what you're really saying is this: my story deserves supernatural significance. Their suffering does not. And you may never say it that way out loud, but that is the logic of the testimony. Somebody says, I was on drugs. I crashed my car and God saved me. Really? So God reached into the wreckage of your bad decisions, but watched a sober child die slowly from hunger. That's your testimony? Somebody says, my house burned down, but my Bible survived, so God was speaking. Really? So God preserved paper, but not children with flesh, nerves, tears, and fear. That's the God you want me to bow down and worship. Do you not see how ugly it sounds when you actually follow the logic? This is why I say so much. Religion is emotional interpretation without intellectual honesty. People call whatever benefits them a miracle. And whatever destroys someone else, they call it God's mysterious plan. No, ladies and gentlemen, that is not wisdom. That is self-centered superstition. And then the believer gets uncomfortable because they know where this is going. Because once you admit that children are not being saved, once you admit that the innocent are not being protected, once you admit that the weakest among us are left exposed every single day, then the fantasy of divine rescue starts to collapse. And that's what this sermon is about. Not just disproving miracles, but exposing how selective miracle language really is. Because people don't usually say, God intervened when a child dies in agony. They say, God needed another angel. Or the Lord works in mysterious ways. Or they're in a better place now. Look at what religion does to the human mind. It takes horror and makes it poetic. It takes cruelty and makes it sacred. It takes helplessness and turns it into a sermon illustration. And I'm saying no more of that. No more pretending that unprotected children are part of some beautiful divine story. No more acting like your lucky break is proof that heaven is active. No more calling randomness a miracle when the graveyards are full of children who never got one. Now let's get to the real truth. You survived because survival happens sometimes. You made it through because probability works that way sometimes. The doctor got there in time. The angle of impact shifted. The fire moved another direction. Your body endured. The odds broke your way. That's all. And that should be enough. You don't need to add a miracle to your survival to make it matter. You don't need to add God to your luck for your life to be meaningful. You survived. Good. Now, what are you going to do with it? That is the self-sufficiency question. Not, why did God choose me? But rather, what am I going to do with the time I still have? Because the reality is, nobody is coming to save you. And the clearest evidence of that is children. If an all-loving, powerful God does not intervene for children, then stop insulting our intelligence by telling us he intervened for your parking space, your car accident, your burnt Bible, or your delayed paycheck. That is not faith. That is ego. That is you reading divine importance into your own survival because it comforts you. And that comfort is not the same as truth. So let me close it like this. If God saved you, why didn't he save the children? If he intervened in your life, why not theirs? If he had a hand on your situation, why were their small hands left empty? And if the answer is mystery, then mystery is not good enough. Because children are not abstract ideas. They are not sermon props. They are not footnotes in theology. They are the strongest evidence against selective divine intervention that religion has never honestly answered. You got lucky. Be grateful if you want. Be reflective if you want. Use your survival to become wiser if you want to. But stop calling it proof of God while children are still dying without rescue. That is not humility. That is self-importance with spiritual language wrapped around it. And I'm not buying it. Remember, as I always say, life is suffering. Death is mercy. No one is coming to save you. So save yourself. Until next time.